Good morning, students. In this lecture, I'm going to tell you about command line, shell, and utilities. So, first of all, I will tell you about what is shell in simple language or in simple lines. What do you mean by shell? First of all, definition of shell is a shell provides you with an interface to the Unix system. Again, I repeat the definition of shell. A shell provides you with an interface to the Unix system. So it gathers input, it gathers input from you and executes program based on that input. Understand? It gathers input from your side and executes programs based on that input. You can say it's a shell is a interface between user and program. So when a program finishes executing, it displays the program's output. So shell helps you with an interface to the Unix system. Again, if we are talking about the simple definition, shell is an environment. Shell is an environment in which we can run our commands. As I told you earlier, shell is an environment which we can run our commands, programs also, and shell scripts also. Okay, there are different flavors of shell available in a Linux operating system. So just as there are different flavors of operating system, so each flavor of shell has its own set of recognized commands and functions. One line, again I repeat, only one line. Shell is an environment in which we can run our commands, programs, and shell scripts. Understand? So let's start the lecture. Here, you see, this is your structure of the chapter. First of all, objectives of this chapter, introduction, what is shell, features of shell. So types of shells. So Bourne shell, this is the first type of shell. Bash shell, this is a second bash shell. And these are the categorized forms of a bash shell. Bash commands, corn shell, C shell, Z shell. And what about job control, environment variables, and what do you mean by pipes, and what do you mean by redirection? So this is a structure of the chapter. So here you see objectives of the objective of this chapter. So is to familiarize the student with types of shells, job control environment variables, pipes and redirection, documentation tools. Understand? Before starting, I will tell you about shell prompt. So many of the student ask me like, sir, what is a shell prompt? So you telling me about sir, what is shell? And we all understand about what is shell. But sir, what is a shell prompt? PROMPT. Sir, what is shell prompt? Basically, the prompt dollar sign. You can say dollar sign like this. Here you see dollar sign. Here you see this is this is a prompt. This is a prompt which is called the command prompt. This is basically, what is this basically? This is a command prompt. Okay, this is a command prompt is issued by the shell, not cell, shell. it is issued by the shell. Okay, while the prompt is displayed, you can type a command. Okay, when you open the terminal, and you see there is a sign, that is dollar sign. What is this? This is a your command prompt, and it is issued by the shell. And when your shell your command prompt is visible and displayed, you can type a command further here, like for example ls command, and then press enter. Okay, so this is your command prompt. Understand? So shell reads your input. What your input? Your input is your ls input. For example, listen carefully all. This is your shell prompt, command prompt, and I'm right now, for example, Mohit user, for example. Okay, so this is your this is my shell prompt, command prompt. Understand? And you see, when I type input like ls, for example, ls. So now I'm going to enter like this. For example, I'm going to enter. Okay, so shell shell reads shell reads the input. Shell reads the input after you press enter. When you press enter, shell reads the input from user. It determines, listen carefully student, it determines the command you want executed by looking at the first word of your input. Like this, my input is what? My input is ls. So shell reads your input and it determines the command. Shell reads what type of this command. So it determines the command you want executed by looking at the first word of your input. Understand? So first of all, when any shell like a C shell, like Z shell, like bash shell. So what it mean? What it mean? Okay. So here you see, when you type ls command, so shell reads your input first, and now a word is an unbroken set of characters. Means when you use a C shell, Z shell, bond shell, any shell you use. So this shell reads your input and breaks into one character. Like first character is your L, second character is your S. So a word, ls is your one word. Ls is your one word, and a word is an unbroken set of characters. So spaces and tabs separate words. Understand? So this is your objectives of this chapter: to familiarize the student with the types of shells, job control, environment variables, pipes and redirection, documentation tools. So this is all about your what is a simple definition of shell. So here you see, so uh, introduction. So as I told you, a shell works as an interpreter for a user and operating system, and it converts the commands issued by a user into internal system calls that invoke kernel's corresponding routines to implement the required purpose of the command. You don't need to nervous. You just understand in simple words, a shell is a special user program. A shell is a special user program that provides an interface to the user to use operating system services. Understand? Simple definition of a shell. a simple definition of shell. A shell is a special user program that provides an interface to the user to use operating system services. So shell, you can say, shell accepts human readable commands from the user and converts them into something which the kernel can understand. Okay, so in other words, it converts the operating system actions into responses for the user. In Linux, many types of shells such as Bourne shell, Corn shell, Bash shell, Z shell, C shell, TC shell are available with varying number of features and capabilities. Understand? So next is your shell. So basically, a shell is a program that acts as an interface between a user and the kernel. So in other words, it helps a user to assess the operating system services, as I told you. So it is also called as a command line interpreter, CLI, which interprets the commands of the user and takes action accordingly. Okay, so it is a command language interpreter that executes commands read from input devices, okay, such as your keyboards or from files. So the shell gets started when the user logs in or starts the terminal. Okay, when you start your terminal, okay, so the shell gets started. Okay, when you at the time of user login, when you logged in your Ubuntu operating system or any kind of operating system, understand? So it is a command language interpreter, understand? So again, I repeat, so shell accepts human readable commands from the user and converts them into something which the kernel can understand. Okay. So like, for example, your less command, head command, tail command, and so many commands. Okay. So shell basically in Unix, I'm talking about right now Unix. So there are two major types of shells. So first is your Bourne shell, and second is your C shell. So what is Bourne shell basically? So a Bourne shell basically, if you are using a Bourne type shell, the dollar character is the default prompt. Okay, you don't need to install any kind of shell. So basically, when you install your Linux operating system, it is automatically installed. When you display it on your terminal like a dollar sign, the dollar character is your bond type shell. Okay, default by default the prompt. Okay, so second is your C shell. C shell, if you are using a C type shell, the percentage character is the default prompt. Understand? Here you see when you see on your terminal like the sign of a dollar, so it means this is your Bourne shell. This is your Bourne shell. Okay, so if you display or for example, if you see like this is the sign of your seashell. This is the sign of your seashell. It means your command prompt. It is your default prompt. Okay, understand? So here you see the Bourne shell has the following subcategories like only I'm talking about like a Bourne shell right now. So the Bourne shell has the following subcategories like Bourne shell, SH, Corn shell, KSH, Born Again shell, Bash, BASH, POSIX shell, SH. So the different C type shells of C shell, CSH, 10x or tops. You can 10x or tops, TENEX or TOPS is the same. So she shell. So in the Born shell, there are four categories of shells: Born shell, Corn shell, Born Again shell, POSIX shell. So in that your C shell, there is a POSIX 10x and top shell or C shell. Understand? So there are a lot of features of shell, like all the shells, irrespective of their nature, offer same functions, such as its support. So, first of all, I will tell you the original Unix shell was written in the mid 1970s by Stephen R. Bourne while he was at AT&T's Bell Lab in New Jersey. So, first feature of your command line interpretation, your second feature is your keywords, second third is your wildcards. So first is your command line interpretation, so it is concerned with how a command is recognized or its meaning is determined. Okay, so it involves looking for shell prompts such as your dollar. Again, I told you, like a dollar, like is your bond shell by default. Percentage is your C shell and this is your Z shell. Like for example, okay. So commands like ls and cat and chgrp, etc. So followed by options and argument. So second feature is your keyword. So there are some reserve words with every shell, such as do, for while, if else, etc. Usually these keywords are using during shell programming. So bond shell was the first shell to appear on Unix system. Okay, so as I told you, so this it is referred to as the shell. Okay, fine. So third is feature is your wild cards. So these are the special character which are used to determine file directory names, etc. So these are star to match any number of characters, question mark to match a single character. Okay, so these are your feature of shells. First is the command line interpretation, keywords, and wildcards. Okay, so here again I tell you types of shells. So there are various types of shells, like two main shells is your bond shell and C shell, and in your bond shell there are various categories categorized. Again I tell you, in bond shell there is a bond shell, corn shell, bond again shell, POSIX shell. But in the your C shell, C shell, CSH, and 10x tops C shell. Okay, so there are various types of shell that can be used in Linux according to the need and convenience of a user. And each of the shell has different shell prompts like dollar, like pound. So this sign indicate as a pound, or you can say percentage where command is typed. So the command that is typed at any prompt is called as command line. This line is very important, where you type the command at any prompt. So it is the command line. For example, for example, dollar sign, what it mean? This is your bond shell. Okay, so this is your ls command. Okay, so l command consists of command ls and its option minus L and arguments. The default shell of Linux is a bash shell, which is an excellent command line shell and a good scripting language. So the executable shell files can be found at the hash bin directory. First of all, your Bourne shell. Okay, so here you see the Bourne shell was written by Stephen Bourne. This is your first type of shell, Bourne shell, like dollar sign. So it provides a powerful build. So it provides powerful built-in language, and it supports startup files, command execution, redirection, signal handling, file handling, etc. So it uses dollar as its shell prompt. So it is parent of all the shell like KSH and your bash, ZSH. So it was the first shell followed by CH shell, CSH, KSH, DCSH, bash, ZSH in development order. Okay, so this is all about your bash shell. So here I'm going to tell you about again I'm telling about your what is kernel basically. So some student didn't know about what is kernel. Sir, we don't know about a kernel. Sir, please tell me about what is kernel. So right now I'm going to tell you again what is kernel basically. Kernel is a heart of Linux operating system. Heart. Okay. Kernel is a heart of Linux operating system. Okay. So it manages resources of Linux operating system. Okay. So resources means what? Facilities available in Linux. For example, your facilities to store data, print data on printer, memory, like your file management, etc. So kernel decide who will use the resource. Understand? So kernel decide who will use this resource for how long and when. For how long and when. So it runs your program, or you can say setup to execute binary files. So it's memory resident portion of Linux. So it performs the following task. I'm talking about kernel. Okay. So kernel, for example, the resources mean your facilities available in Linux. So kernel is the heart of Linux operating system, and it manages resources of Linux operating system. There are various performances following tasks like input management, process management, device management, file management, memory management. Okay. So this is about your kernel. Understand? So again, now I'm going to tell you about, wait. Okay. Now I'm going to tell you about what is the Linux shell basically. What is Linux shell? So here I'm going to draw like one box here again, and again I'm going to tell you diagrammatically. I'm going to elaborate diagrammatically what is Linux shell actually. Okay. You understand very well from this diagram, for example. Okay. So here you see, so this is your like for example, I'm going to write here. So this is your, I'm going to decrease the where. Okay. Here. So this is your command or shell script. Understand? So this box indicates your command or shell script. I'm going right now. I'm going to tell you what's Linux shell. So computer understand the language of zeros and ones called binary language first. Okay. So in early days of computing, instructions are provided using binary language. Okay, which is difficult for all of us. Okay. So now again I'm going to uh, type here. You see, this is your Linux shell. This is your Linux shell. Okay. So here, what is this? This is your converted to binary language by shell. This block indicates your converted to binary language by shell, and this box indicates your in Linux shell, like your Bourne shell, like your B bash shell, like a Z shell, like a C shell, and this is your command, like ls command. First step is your when you type ls command, and it convert this is your Linux shell, and this is converted to binary language. And what is this? See here, now Linux kernel understand your request. So listen student carefully. Computer understand the language of zeros and ones called binary language. Okay, so in early days of computing, instructions are provided using binary language. Okay, so which is difficult for all of us to read and write. Okay na? So in operating system there is a special program. In operating system there is a special program called shell. Special program is called shell. So shell accepts your instruction or command. So here you see shell accepts your command. Shell accept your command. Okay, or your instruction, for example. Here, this is your instruction, this is your command, for example ls command. for, ex- for example, this is ls command. So shell reads the instruction or command in english, okay, and translate it into computer native binary language, and translate it into converted it into binary language by shell. We some kind of shell like bond shell, for example. Here we use like a z shell, for example. Okay, for example. So z shell first of all read your instruction from you have typed like ls, and then convert it to binary language by shell. Okay, so you type your command and shell convert in it as, for example. Again I'm going to tell you about, for example, I'm going to erase all. So this is about your shell basically. Okay, so again I'm going to draw the box. Here you see this is first box. Okay, this here second. For example, wow, how actually shell works, I'm going to tell you how actually shell works, for example. Okay, okay. So what is the process in backend, how it process through source to destination. Please wait. Here you see this is your, for example, this is your default prompt like a bash cell, and you have to type ls, for example, and this is your dollar sign again, and you have to type date command, and again this is your bash cell, and this is your third command. Okay, this actually this is the process how a shell works in behind your operating system. Okay, so for example, this here bash cell, this is your bash cell. Okay, here you see this is your 0101 binary language. Okay, and this is your linux kernel. So here you see its environment provided for user interaction. So shell is an command language interpreter that executes commands read from the standard input device, keyboard, or from a file. So Linux may use one of the following most popular shell. Okay, so in MS-DOS, shell name as a command.com, your command prompt in uh, Windows operating system. So which is also used for same purpose. So, but it's not as a powerful as our Linux shells. Okay, so basically, this is your shell, how it works in the backend. So when you type ls, your shell converts it into binary language and put it into a Linux kernel to understand what is this actually. Okay, so this is the whole process of shell basically. Okay, okay. So next is your bash shell. So born again shell is a freely distributed shell under GNU GPL, which is based on the Bourne shell as such. So thus most Bourne script can be run in bash with no modification. So it is the default shell for Linux operating system. It was written by Brian Fox of the Free Software Foundation, FSF. So other features of bash are history recall and editing, completion of names. So these are the bash commands. So alias means that you have to create an alias. Break means exit from a loop. So continue means resume the next iteration of a loop. Enable means enable and disable built-in shell commands. Exec means your execute a command. Exit means exit the shell, and so on. So these are the bash commands available in bash prompt. So what is the corn shell? So it is the direct descendant of the bond shell. Descendant means decrease of the bond shell, and it is almost compatible with the bond shell. So such that any shell script written for a bond shell can be executed on the corn shell, but not vice versa. So the corn shell is written by David G. Corn. So if we are talking about a bash cell, so bash cell basically developed by Brian Fox and Remy, Chet Remy, and where this is your free software foundation. Okay, so if we are talking about CSH shell, you can say she shell. So it's developed by Bill Joy. So where it is developed, University of California. Okay, so now I'm talking about KS shell. So KS shell developed by David Korn, and where it's is developed AT&T Bell Labs. Okay, understand? So command history, command editing. So it provides command history to modify and reuse previously typed commands. Command editing. So these are the features of corn shell. So it enables you to revise and correct commands as you type them, which greatly reduce the amount of time you spend retyping commands. So C shell, it is one of the most popular shells of Linux. It is written by Bill Joy. So the commands in the C shell follow the C language syntax. Okay. So TCSH, it is a developed to remove the bugs and improve the features of C shell. So some of its features are enhanced prompt, spelling corrections, improved command history, name completion, built-in command. Next is your Z shell. So it is another very popular shell which shares the syntax of the Bond shell. Like so, being from Bond family, it is very analogous to Shiri, SH, not Shiri, at SH, KSH, Bash, CSH, and TCSH. So job, what is job control actually? So each of the programs that can be run on the system is a job. So the job control refers to the ability of selectively suspending the execution of processes and resuming execution at the later stage. For example, jobs to list all the running jobs of Bash, FG1 to bring a job. So this is not very much important for you. You can skip this slide. Okay. So environmental variables, so exported variables are termed as environment variables that can be used to customize environment by simply changing the values of the variable. So here you see following are the tasks that can be performed by using commands in relation to the environment. So these are the tasks you see performed by using commands in relation to environment variables. Okay. So what is pipes? So the commands can be combined in such a way that the output of one command is sent as an input to another command. Okay. So the connection of commands is called a pipeline, and the connection that links two pipes commands is known as a pipe. The connection symbol like this is your connection symbol, which is known as a pipe symbol. So this is the example of pipes. When you ls minus l slash cat slash less than mohitsud dot txt. So what it mean? So it means the commands can be combined in a such way that the output of one command is sent as an input. It listen carefully. It one command is sent as an input to another command. So here, this is the example of pipe command, not pipe command, pipe topic. So redirection, what is redirection? So the input output redirection means capturing output from a command or file and then sending it automatically as input to another command or file. Okay. So this is your stdin 0 standard out 0 standard out 1 standard 2 example cat mohisud dot text txt and the cat greater than mohit dot text. This is for your create the file, and this is your for amend the file. So thank you for the today's lecture. So how to use shell? To use shell, you start you to use your shell as soon as you log in into your system. So you have to simply type commands. Following is the list of commands like your date command, ls command, man command. Okay, pwd command, cat command, like in command, rm command, chmod command, mail command, who am I command, logout command, mail command, wc command, grep command, sort command. So a lot of commands are available when you use any kind of Linux operating system. So thank you so much for the today's lecture. Thank you so much. Take care.